She arrived from the silent green mountains of Vermont with the strength of her roots in her eyes and dreams of a different future in her hands. He dominated Manhattan with calculated coldness until that simple woman entered his office and turned everything upside down. Amidst held-back glances, risky choices, and a project that concealed more than it seemed, an unexpected feeling emerged. But when the past returns to demand payment, will their love be strong enough to resist? The morning sun filtered through the slightly open blinds, painting golden stripes on the wide plank pine floor of the old Vermont farmhouse. Sierra Bennett woke to the song of the robins inhabiting the century-old maple tree outside her window. It was the last day before her departure for New York City, and the aroma of coffee, coupled with the sweet scent of maple syrup prepared by her Grandma Grace, already permeated the air. "Wake up, sweetheart. The day doesn't wait for dreamers." Grandma Grace's warm voice echoed from the kitchen. Sierra smiled, stretching. At 30, with a brilliant career as an environmental engineer, she still felt like a child in that house, where time seemed to flow at a different pace, marked by the seasons and respect for the land. "Coming, Grandma," she replied, running a hand through her brown hair that fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She got up, observing the simple but neat room for a moment, the engineering books next to romance novels, the microscope her high school science professor had given her, convinced that this determined girl would go far. She had succeeded, winning scholarships, completing a master's at MIT, and now, crowning it all, the invitation to NYC to present her innovative environmental integration project. In the kitchen, her grandmother poured coffee into 2 hand-thrown ceramic mugs. "Are you worried?" the elderly woman asked, scrutinizing her granddaughter's face with sharp eyes despite her age. Sierra took a sip of coffee before answering. "Not worried. It's just that in New York, I'll be the outsider again, the small-town girl who has to prove herself twice as much to be taken seriously." Her grandmother nodded, understanding. "Remember what your grandfather used to say? The strongest roots grow in rocky soil. You have deep roots, Sierra. No Manhattan skyscraper can compete with that." Later, as Sierra packed the last documents, her phone vibrated. It was a message from her friend Chloe. "I looked up Alexander Sterling. He's impressive, but they say he's cold as marble." "Be careful," Sierra smiled. She had heard of the famous Sterling, the successful entrepreneur who had revolutionized the concept of sustainable high-rise development. An almost mythological figure in his field, brilliant, demanding, impossible to impress. A man who had transformed sheer determination into an empire, starting from scratch. "Don't worry," she replied to Chloe. "I'm not in New York to make friends. I'm there to get my project accepted." The sunset colored the Green Mountains orange when Sierra sat on the garden wall, breathing deeply the air scented with pine and wet earth. The small village stretched out below her with its clapboard roofs and white steeples. How different it was from the panorama that would greet her in Manhattan. "Don't forget who you are," her grandmother said, reaching her with a slow step. "Your strength is precisely in this connection to the earth. People like Sterling may have the power, but we have the wisdom of things that grow." Sierra hugged her grandmother, feeling her fragile frame under the soft cardigan. "I'll call you every day." "No." The elderly woman smiled. "Call me when you have something to tell. New York isn't just a professional opportunity, Sierra. It's a new chapter in your life. And remember, true success isn't measured in approved projects, but in days lived with integrity." That night, Sierra struggled to sleep. She replayed the journey that had brought her here, the nights of study, the prejudices overcome, the determination that had sustained her when it seemed impossible to make headway in an environment dominated by men, often skeptical of a young woman raised upstate. Alexander Sterling represented everything she had fought against: power, influence, a certain emotional detachment necessary to survive at the top. Yet, paradoxically, he was the one who could transform her dream project into reality. "I will surprise you, Sterling," she whispered in the darkness, as sleep finally enveloped her. "You've never met a force of nature like me." The neon light of the office on the 70th floor cut the New York darkness like a knife. Alexander Sterling looked at the city sprawling at his feet, a carpet of lights pulsing to the frantic rhythm of the metropolis. It was nearly midnight, but he was still there, immersed in the plans for the Brooklyn waterfront revitalization, his new challenge, the Tides Project. "Shouldn't you head home, Chief?" asked Ethan, his assistant, peering through the door with a tired expression. "Tomorrow is going to be intense." Alex did not take his eyes off the three-dimensional renderings illuminating the screen. "Just one more detail," he replied in the controlled voice that everyone at Sterling Urban Solutions knew well, the voice of one who accepts no compromises, especially not with himself. When Ethan finally left, Alex allowed himself a moment of relaxation. He ran a hand through his dark hair, where a few silver threads had begun to appear, despite him being only 38. The price of success, he thought with a half-smile, a price he had always willingly paid. His gaze fell on the framed photo on the desk, a skinny kid in an oversized Red Sox jersey in a working-class neighborhood of Boston. His father, a union man, held him by the shoulders with pride. "You'll be someone, Alex," he always repeated. And he had succeeded, with iron determination and an almost superhuman ability to devour obstacles. His phone vibrated, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Victoria Adams. "Heard about tomorrow's presentation. Is this Bennett just your latest gimmick to make the project look greener?" "Remember, the city planning board is watching." Alex frowned. Victoria, now an influential city council member, had been more than a friend years ago. Their relationship had ended when she chose a political career and he chose entrepreneurship, but the real reason for the breakup had been deeper. Victoria had always seen success as power over others, while for Alex, it was about surpassing himself. He didn't reply to the message. Instead, he opened the file containing the resume of Sierra Bennett, whom he would meet the next day. The photo showed a young woman with an intense, determined gaze. Her unusually green eyes seemed to challenge the lens. Alex quickly scanned the details. Raised in Vermont, excellent education despite modest origins, significant publications on integrating traditional techniques into modern projects. "Let's see if you're really as special as they say," he murmured, closing the file. The next morning, the conference room at Sterling Urban Solutions was full. Architects, engineers, and city representatives awaited the renowned entrepreneur's presentation. Alex entered with the precision of a Swiss watch, wearing a charcoal gray suit that emphasized his tall, lean figure. Silence fell immediately. It was the effect he always had on people, respect mixed with apprehension. "Good morning, everyone," he began in a firm voice. "The Tides Project represents our vision for New York, a city that looks to the future without forgetting its historical legacy." As he spoke, he noticed a figure discreetly entering the room. Sierra Bennett wore a simple yet elegant forest green business suit. She sat in the back row, pulling out a notebook. Alex continued, but a part of his attention remained fixed on the woman who was observing every detail with a critical eye. When he concluded the general presentation, he announced, "And now, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sierra Bennett, who will outline her vision for the environmental integration of the project." Sierra stood up with studied composure. As she walked toward the podium, Alex noticed that she didn't walk with the typical insecurity of someone who feels out of place in a large city, but with the natural elegance of someone perfectly comfortable in their own skin. Their eyes met for an instant. No perfunctory smile, no gesture of submission, just a silent acknowledgement, peer to peer. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," Sierra began in a clear voice. "Your project is ambitious and technically impeccable. But allow me to illustrate why, in its current form, it is destined to fail in its soul." A murmur went through the room. Ethan shot an alarmed look at Alex, accustomed to seeing him react harshly to criticism. But to everyone's surprise, the entrepreneur merely gestured for her to continue. As Sierra passionately and technically illustrated her alternative vision, Alex found himself admiring her. It wasn't just her natural beauty or evident intelligence. It was something rarer in his world, a disarming authenticity, a conviction that went beyond the desire to impress. "Your project talks about sustainability," Sierra concluded, "but true sustainability isn't just a matter of materials or technology. It's a dialogue between past and future, between people and the land. That is the dialogue that is missing." When she finished, the silence in the room was charged with tension. All eyes were on Alexander Sterling, the man who did not tolerate contradiction. "Interesting perspective, Dr. Bennett," he finally said in a tone none of those present had ever heard him use. "I would like to explore these concepts further in my office after the meeting." Sierra held his gaze without flinching. "With pleasure, Mr. Sterling. I brought all the necessary data with me to prove I am right." An imperceptible smile creased Alex's lips. That woman from Vermont had just done what no one dared to do in years, openly challenge him. And strangely, instead of irritation, he felt a spark of something he had almost forgotten. Curiosity, respect, and perhaps, though he would never admit it, the beginnings of admiration. The light of the Manhattan sunset filtered through the large glass windows of Alex Sterling's office, tinging the architectural models arranged with millimeter precision on the crystal desk with rose gold. Sierra observed the environment with a keen-eye minimalist, impeccable, cold in its perfection, like the man who inhabited it. "Dr. Bennett, I appreciate the courage," Alex began, indicating an armchair in front of the desk. "But I fear your vision, however poetic, is incompatible with the economic constraints of the Tides project." Sierra sat down, calmly placing her worn leather briefcase, a graduation gift from her grandmother, next to the entrepreneur's high-tech project blueprints. The contrast could not have been more evident. "Poetry, Mr. Sterling, can be tremendously practical," she replied, pulling out some documents. "My calculations demonstrate that, by integrating traditional water recovery techniques, typical of Vermont rural architecture specifically, advanced rainwater harvesting and graywater recycling, we could reduce maintenance costs by 28% over the next 10 years. The entrepreneur raised an eyebrow, visibly skeptical. "Vermont is not Manhattan." "Exactly," Sierra smiled, pushing a detailed graph toward him. "That is the point. New York is trying to impose standardized solutions on a waterfront district that breathes history. The Tides area has a soul of its own that demands respect." Alex took the document, studying it carefully. Sierra noticed the absolute concentration in his steely gray-blue eyes, the almost imperceptible tension in his square jaw. He was not a man accustomed to reconsidering his positions. "An interesting approach," he finally admitted, "but there's a fundamental problem, Doctor: timing. Your solutions would require additional months." "Not necessarily," Sierra countered. "If we organize the construction site using a rotational model, involving local artisans for the historical restoration parts, while proceeding with the modern structures, we could even accelerate the timeline." For almost 2 hours, they debated every aspect of the project. It wasn't just a clash of visions, but of worlds: urban efficiency against rural wisdom, technology against tradition, the power of money against the strength of roots. "You are tenacious," Alex observed when the clock struck 8 p.m. There was a new note in his voice. He was no longer just the entrepreneur evaluating a proposal, but a man genuinely intrigued. "I grew up helping my grandmother in the garden," Sierra smiled. "You learn quickly that nature does not yield to your wishes. You have to adapt to its rhythms." Alex stood up, approaching the window. New York City glittered below them, a sea of artificial lights that obscured the stars. "You know what struck me about your presentation? You never used the word I. It was always we. The project, the community." He turned to look at her. "That's rare in this environment." Sierra shrugged. "I'm not here to assert myself, but to defend an idea I believe in." A silence charged with unspoken meanings settled between them. Alex broke it with an unexpected gesture. "Have you eaten?" The question caught Sierra by surprise. "Actually, no. There's a small place nearby. Authentic farm-to-table cuisine. We could continue the discussion there." Sierra hesitated. She was unprepared for this turn. She had studied Alex Sterling as a professional adversary, not as what exactly. "Just a working dinner," he added, correctly interpreting her hesitation. "Unless farm-to-table doesn't meet your Vermont standards." The veiled challenge in his tone made Sierra smile. "I accept the challenge, Mr. Sterling, but I warn you, I am a ruthless food critic." The restaurant was an old New England inn transplanted into the heart of Manhattan. Dark wood paneling, checked tablecloths, a warm atmosphere that contrasted with the city's frantic spirit outside. The owner greeted Alex like an old friend. "I'll let you choose," Sierra said when they were seated in a discreet corner. "Foolhardy trust," he commented with a hint of a smile, then ordered, focusing on local, seasonal ingredients. During dinner, the conversation gradually shifted from the project to their personal stories. Sierra discovered that Alex had worked as a laborer to pay for his college tuition, that he spoke 4 languages, and that he had a hidden passion for classical literature. He, in turn, listened with growing interest to Sierra's tales of Vermont life, her bond with her grandmother, and her battles to earn respect in a male-dominated field. "It couldn't have been easy," he commented at one point, after she described a particularly frustrating episode during her master's at MIT. "Difficulty forges character," Sierra replied, unknowingly quoting a phrase her grandmother often repeated. Alex stared at her intensely. "Do you know the difference between us, Dr. Bennett? I had to learn not to trust the world. You, on the other hand, seem to have learned to trust despite everything." For the first time, Sierra glimpsed a crack in the facade of the successful entrepreneur, a hint of vulnerability quickly masked behind a sip of red wine. The dinner concluded with a triple berry cobbler that elicited even enthusiastic approval from Sierra. When they left, a light rain had washed the Manhattan air, making it surprisingly fresh. "I'll take you to your hotel," Alex said, hailing a taxi. "I prefer to walk," Sierra replied. "The rain reminds me of home." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll walk with you then." They walked in silence for a few blocks, the atmosphere between them charged with a new tension, different from the professional clash of the afternoon, more complex, more personal. "When will I have your decision on the project?" Sierra finally asked, stopping under a streetlight. Alex looked at her, his face partially shadowed. "I need to consult the board, but I promise I will seriously consider your proposals." Sierra nodded. "That's all I ask, an honest consideration." When they parted outside the hotel, neither reached out to shake hands. Physical contact suddenly seemed too charged with meaning. "Good night, Dr. Bennett," he said, his voice unusually soft. "Sierra," she corrected him. "After sharing life views and cobbler, I think we can use first names." A genuine smile briefly illuminated Alex's usually impassive face. "Good night, Sierra." Later, in her hotel room, Sierra called her grandmother as promised. "So, how did the meeting with the famous Sterling go?" the elderly woman asked. Sierra looked out the window at the lights of New York shining under the rain. Complicated," she finally replied. "The man is exactly as I imagined, brilliant, demanding, accustomed to bending the world to his will. And yet, her grandmother gently prodded, "there's something more. Something that isn't seen in the portraits in business magazines." Her grandmother was silent for a moment, then said wisely, "Remember, my Sierra, people are like mountains. From afar they seem simple, defined. It is only when you get closer that you discover the hidden valleys, the secret paths, the unexpected springs." Sierra smiled in the dark. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my little one. And remember, always follow your inner compass. It has never steered you wrong." After hanging up, Sierra stayed awake for a long time, replaying the day's events. Suddenly, New York didn't seem so foreign and cold. Or perhaps it was just a certain New Yorker who now appeared to her in a different light. The following days passed in a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and technical discussions. Sierra had quickly integrated into the Tides project team, earning the respect, sometimes reluctant, of the engineers at Sterling Urban Solutions. Ethan, Alex's loyal assistant, watched her with a mix of admiration and concern as she outlined her ideas during a morning meeting. "I've never seen anyone stand up to the boss the way you do," he confessed during a coffee break. "Usually, when Sterling decides a direction, no one dares propose alternatives." Sierra stirred her espresso, reflecting, "Maybe that's the problem. Sometimes we need someone to challenge us to do our best. Or to throw 6 months of work out the window," Ethan countered with an ironic smile, indicating the original blueprints now covered in annotations and modifications. Indeed, the project was evolving rapidly. Sierra's proposals had sparked a creative process that had infected the entire team, and to everyone's surprise, Alex seemed to encourage this change, of course. That morning, the entrepreneur entered the meeting room with unusual energy. "I've arranged a site visit to the waterfront district," he announced. "I want everyone to see the space with new eyes. Especially," he added, looking directly at Sierra, "I want to understand exactly what you mean by the soul of the place." 2 hours later, the small group walked along the Brooklyn waterfront. It was an unusually clear day for New York, with a blue sky reflected in the East River. Elderly people played chess outside cafes. Street artists painted urban scenes. Couples strolled hand in hand. "Here," Sierra said, stopping abruptly and pointing to an old brick warehouse on the corner. "This is exactly what I was talking about." The building, once probably elegant, showed signs of neglect. Yet, in the particular light of that morning, it exuded undeniable charm. "It's just an old structure," commented one of the architects, "structurally compromised, moreover." Sierra shook her head. "Look beyond the structure. Look at the proportions, the details, the way it relates to the surrounding buildings. There is a silent conversation between these spaces that has lasted for centuries." Alex approached the building, respectfully touching an old granite column. "My father used to bring me here as a kid," he said unexpectedly. "He told me that New York is a city of layers, like a book whose pages tell different but connected stories." The group fell silent, surprised by this sudden personal openness. Sierra looked at Alex with new eyes, catching a vulnerability the man rarely showed. They continued the visit, with Sierra pointing out details that most people would miss: the way the light hit certain angles, how the sound changed at specific points, the natural rhythm with which people moved through the space. "You don't just see with your eyes," Alex observed at one point, while the others had moved away to examine a specific area. "You perceive space with all your senses." Sierra smiled. "That's how my grandmother taught me." "Sierra," she would say, "beauty is not seen, it is felt on the skin." They found themselves sitting on a bench facing the water during a break. The conversation flowed with a naturalness that surprised them both. "How did you do it?" Alex suddenly asked. "Do what?" "Retain this authenticity in a world that rewards conformity." Sierra thought before answering. "I don't think I had a choice. My roots are too deep to be torn out, and maybe I never wanted to be different." Alex nodded slowly. "I, on the other hand, tried to reinvent myself completely. The Boston neighborhood kid had to disappear for the successful entrepreneur to emerge." "And did he succeed?" Sierra asked, scrutinizing his face carefully. A bitter smile played on Alex's lips. "Too well, I'm afraid." The moment of intimacy was interrupted by the insistent sound of Alex's phone. It was a message from Victoria Adams. "We need to talk about the Tides project. Urgent. Lunch together." The entrepreneur's face visibly darkened. "Problems?" asked Sierra. "Politics?" he replied briefly. "Councilwoman Adams has suddenly developed a strong interest in our project." Sierra looked at him inquiringly. "That's positive, isn't it?" "Political support." "Victoria never offers support without asking for something in return," he replied, standing up. "I'm sorry, I have to handle this. Can you continue the site visit with Ethan?" Before Sierra could answer, an elegant female figure approached them, tall, slender, wearing a pearl gray suit and a penetrating gaze. "Alex, what a coincidence. I was just coming to look for you," the woman said with a calculated smile. "Victoria," he replied, visibly tense. "I thought we were meeting for lunch." "I decided to come early," she replied, shifting her gaze to Sierra with evident curiosity. "And this must be the famous Dr. Bennett, your new environmental consultant." The tone with which she spoke the last phrase made Sierra stiffen. Alex quickly made the introductions. "Pleased to meet you, Councilwoman," Sierra said with professional courtesy. "The pleasure is mine," Victoria replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've heard a lot about you. The small-town girl who's revolutionizing Sterling's flagship project. Fascinating." Sierra maintained her composure, accustomed to this kind of condescension. "I prefer to think we are evolving the project together, integrating different perspectives." Victoria chuckled lightly. "How diplomatic. Alex, we really must talk privately." The entrepreneur looked conflicted. "I'll meet you at the restaurant shortly." With one last evaluating look at Sierra, Victoria walked away with confident steps. I apologize for that, Alex said, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. Don't worry, Sierra replied. I'm used to being underestimated. Victoria is, he began, then stopped himself. It's complicated. Sierra nodded, suddenly feeling a wall rise between them. You should go. Politics doesn't wait. Left alone, Sierra continued observing the district, trying to concentrate on the project, but her thoughts kept returning to Alex's reaction in Victoria's presence, the change in his demeanor, and the palpable tension between the two. Later, in the hotel lobby, she met Ethan, who was waiting for her with some folders. The boss asked me to deliver these documents, he explained. They are the new parameters approved by the board. They include many of your proposals. Sierra leafed through the documents with growing satisfaction. This is an important victory. Ethan hesitated, then added, You know, I've never seen him so involved in a project. He usually delegates many aspects, but in this case, he is personally overseeing every detail. I imagine it's because of the strategic importance of the Tides project, Sierra commented in a neutral tone. Ethan looked at her with an indulgent expression. Of course, that must be it. He paused. By the way, tonight there's a dinner with some key investors. The boss insisted you be there. That evening, as she prepared for dinner, Sierra called her grandmother for the usual update. How is the project progressing? The elderly woman asked. Well, surprisingly, many of my ideas have been accepted, and as for the Iceman, he's thawing. Sierra smiled at the nickname she had used to describe Alex. He's more complicated than I thought, Grandma. Sometimes I glimpse a completely different man from the public image. Then, suddenly, the barriers go back up. Her grandmother was silent for a moment. The strongest trees grow slowly, Sierra, and those that have faced harsh winters are often the most reluctant to show their blossoms in spring. They've learned that frost can return at any moment. Sierra reflected on those words as she put on the simple emerald green dress she had brought for special occasions. She wondered which version of Alexander Sterling she would encounter that night. The uncompromising entrepreneur, the sensitive man she had glimpsed during the site visit, or someone else entirely. The elegant restaurant in the heart of Manhattan glowed with soft lights and crystal. Sierra walked in with a deep breath, feeling strangely out of place, despite her refined dress. Alex saw her immediately, interrupting a conversation with an elderly gentleman to approach her. You came, he said with a smile he rarely showed in public. I was afraid you'd changed your mind. I never abandon a project halfway through, she replied, surprised by the shift to using first names, which seemed to have happened naturally. The evening proceeded with Sierra, explaining her vision for the Brooklyn waterfront to the investors. The passion in her voice, her deep knowledge, and her authenticity won over even the most skeptical. Alex watched her with growing admiration, occasionally intervening to support her ideas. It's rare to find someone who speaks about sustainability with concreteness rather than rhetoric, commented an important Swiss banker. From her position at the other end of the table, Victoria Adams observed the scene with icy eyes. When she spoke, her tone was politely venomous. The doctor's ideas are fascinating, but I fear the city council has already approved very different parameters. Modifying the project now could lead to complications. A tense silence fell over the table. The investors exchanged uneasy glances. The project is still in the definition phase, Alex intervened calmly. And I can assure you that any modifications will improve the long-term return on investment. Provided the project obtains all the necessary authorizations, Victoria countered with a subtle smile. Sierra immediately sensed the veiled threat. Alex, instead of backing down, addressed the investors with renewed determination. Gentlemen, I invite you to personally visit the site tomorrow morning. Dr. Bennett will show you on the ground the difference her changes could make. Later, as the guests were leaving, Sierra found herself on a secluded terrace with Alex. Thank you for the support, she said, looking out at the city lights. You're the one who convinced those notoriously difficult men, he replied, but Victoria is a problem. She has influence on the planning committee. She seems very determined to obstruct us. Alex hesitated, then revealed, Victoria and I have a complex personal history. I thought it was water under the bridge, but apparently I was wrong. Sierra felt an unexpected pang. I understand. No, I don't think you do. he said, moving closer. Victoria represents everything I moved away from: power used to control others, success measured in political influence. He paused. You are the opposite. You represent what I've always wanted to be, but forgot along the way. And what would that be? Authentic, whole, faithful to your roots. The intensity of his gaze made her blush. For a moment, he seemed on the verge of saying something else, of making a move. I need to get back to the hotel, Sierra murmured, suddenly aware of how close they were. I'll take you, he replied. On the drive, a silence heavy with unspoken words enveloped them both. When they stopped outside the hotel, Alex gently took her hand. Tomorrow will be an important day. But whatever happens with the project, I'm glad I met you, Sierra. She smiled, briefly squeezing his hand before getting out of the car. Me too, Alex. That night she found it hard to sleep. She thought about the dinner, Victoria's words, Alex's touch. New York no longer seemed like a foreign city, but a stage where something important was taking shape. And it wasn't just about the Tides project. In his hotel bed, Alex stared at the ceiling, thinking about the evening. For the first time in years, he felt the barriers he had built around his heart cracking. That woman from Vermont, with her disarming authenticity, was awakening parts of himself he thought were lost forever. What is happening to me? He whispered into the darkness before sleep finally claimed him. The dawn tinged the New York sky pink when Sierra reached the meeting point at the waterfront. She wore practical clothes, jeans, comfortable boots, and a blue linen shirt, a natural elegance that contrasted with the formal suits of the investors who were already waiting. Alex arrived shortly after, carrying rolled blueprints and a contagious energy. Their eyes met, silently communicating a shared determination. Gentlemen, today we won't talk about numbers and returns, he announced. Today we will talk about vision, how to transform this space while preserving its soul. For the next 2 hours, Sierra guided the group through the district, passionately illustrating every aspect of the revised project. Where others saw only old buildings, she showed hidden potential. She described how traditional techniques could integrate with modern solutions, creating a harmonious dialogue between past and future. Imagine this courtyard transformed into a green roof garden that collects rainwater, she explained, pointing to an abandoned space. Not just beauty, but functionality, just like in the old Vermont farmhouses. The investors, initially skeptical, began to show genuine interest. Even the Swiss banker, known for his coldness, asked enthusiastic questions. Beauty that generates value, commented an American investor. That's a powerful concept. As they crossed a bridge over the water, Alex approached Sierra. You're winning them over, he whispered, even the most cynical. She smiled. It's not me, the project speaks for itself. No, it's you, he insisted with a look that communicated much more than words. The moment was interrupted by the sudden arrival of Victoria Adams, accompanied by 2 city planning officials. Her calculated smile barely masked her irritation. What a lovely informal gathering, she commented, shaking hands with studied cordiality. Too bad I wasn't invited. It was a last-minute decision, Alex replied diplomatically. Victoria addressed the investors directly. I hope Mr. Sterling has informed you of the regulatory problems. The board has expressed serious concerns about the proposed modifications. Sierra intervened calmly. What specific concerns, Councilwoman? All our calculations amply respect the urban planning parameters. Technical details we can discuss in the appropriate forum, Victoria replied with a cold smile. But it would be a shame if these gentlemen invested in a project destined to get tied up in bureaucracy. The threat was obvious. The investors exchanged worried glances again. I propose we continue this discussion in my office, Alex said in a firm voice, where we can examine every regulatory aspect in detail. The atmosphere grew tense as the group headed towards the headquarters of Sterling Urban Solutions. Sierra walked beside Alex, feeling his frustration. She's blocking the project for personal reasons, she murmured. I know, he replied, but I won't let it happen. In Alex's office, the discussion turned into a tense confrontation. Victoria raised technical objections. Sierra meticulously dismantled them with scientific precision. Alex mediated with diplomacy. The investors watched the exchange like spectators at an intellectual tennis match. "Your hostility to the project seems personal, councilwoman," the Swiss banker finally observed. Victoria smiled. "I have nothing against the original project, only against the sudden modifications suggested by the consultant from Vermont." "Modifications that improve the project in every aspect," Alex countered. "If you truly believe in the original plan, Victoria, I propose a public presentation. Let the neighborhood residents judge which version they prefer." The proposal surprised everyone. The investors nodded in approval, while Victoria's face stiffened into a mask of forced courtesy. "A populist move, Alex," she commented. "But if you insist, next Thursday, at the Brooklyn Civic Center." When everyone had gone, Sierra and Alex remained alone in the office. "It's a trap," she said. "She wants to put us on the spot publicly." Alex smiled, a smile that, for the first time, seemed totally authentic. "Then we'll have to be extraordinarily convincing. Why did you propose this madness?" He approached her, gently taking her hands. "Because I believe in this project, and I believe in you, Sierra." His touch, warm and reassuring, made Sierra's heart race. For a moment, they remained that way, hands clasped, eyes locked, letting the silence speak for them. "We have a lot of work to do," she finally whispered, without pulling away. "Yes," he agreed, "and only 4 days to prepare the perfect presentation." But they both knew something much more important than the presentation was taking shape between them, something unexpected and powerful, like an underground river finally finding its way to the light. The next 4 days passed in a whirlwind of frantic activity. Sierra and Alex worked side by side, often until late at night, perfecting every detail of the presentation. The conference room at Sterling Urban Solutions had turned into a creative headquarters, with 3D models, sustainable material samples, and illustrative panels covering every surface. "We'll never sleep at this rate," Ethan commented the night before the presentation, watching the two discuss animatedly over a model of the district. "Sleep is overrated," Alex replied, surprising his assistant with a lightness that was unlike him. Sierra smiled, recognizing the subtle but profound transformation taking place in the man. Day by day, the cold entrepreneur gave way to a more authentic version of himself. Passionate, creative, even funny. "We need to recheck the soil permeability data," Sierra said, returning to work, and revise the slides on the connection to historical New York architecture. Alex nodded, then suddenly stopped. "No, we've done enough for today. We need to rest," he gently interrupted. "Tomorrow is a crucial day, and I have a surprise for you." Half an hour later, they were on the terrace of Alex's Manhattan penthouse, with a breathtaking view of the city illuminated by the moon. A simple but elegant dinner had been prepared: pan-seared scallops, a local specialty, and a Vermont craft cider that Alex had specially ordered. "How did you find this cider?" Sierra asked, surprised and touched by the gesture. "I called your grandmother," he confessed with a smile. "An extraordinary woman. She gave me the 3rd degree for half an hour before giving me the name of the orchard." Sierra laughed, perfectly imagining the scene. "Did she approve of you?" "She said I sounded less arrogant than she feared, which I assume is a start." The dinner passed in a relaxed atmosphere, talking not about the project, but about their lives, dreams, and the experiences that had shaped them. Sierra spoke of her childhood in Vermont, the summers spent learning about herbs from her grandmother, and the prejudices faced at the university. Alex, in turn, opened up as never before. He spoke of his working-class father, who died too young, the struggle to rise, and the difficult choices. "I sacrificed a lot to get where I am," he admitted, looking at the city below them. "Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it." "And what's the answer?" Sierra asked, observing his profile against the night sky. "It's changing," he replied, turning to look at her. "Since I met you." The silence that followed was charged with meanings not yet expressed. Sierra broke it by returning to safer ground. "Tomorrow, Victoria will do everything to put us in difficulty." Alex sighed. "Victoria is complicated. We were young, ambitious. For a while we thought we wanted the same things. What changed? Me. Or perhaps I just saw who she truly was." He paused. "For her, Success means power over others. For me, I don't know anymore. I thought it was proving something to the world, and now, his gaze became intense. Now I think true success is building something meaningful, something that lasts beyond us. Sierra felt her heart quicken, like the Tides Project. Not just the project, he replied, moving closer. Sierra, these past few days I've realized that. The insistent sound of his phone interrupted them. It was Ethan with urgent news. Sorry to interrupt, boss, but you need to check your email immediately. Victoria has sent a document to the board. She's trying to block the project on a technicality. The moment of intimacy dissolved, replaced by professional urgency. Alex excused himself, heading toward his study to examine the documents. Sierra remained on the terrace, conflicting feelings stirring in her heart. She was falling in love with this complex man who was rediscovering his true essence thanks to their meeting. But New York was not her home, and soon she would have to return to Vermont. When Alex emerged, his expression was grave. It's worse than I thought. Victoria is using her political power to block the entire project, not just the modifications. She's convinced some board members that our approach violates historical preservation regulations. But that's absurd, Sierra exclaimed. Our project respects the historical identity more than the original one. I know, but it's not about truth, it's about politics. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I'm sorry for ruining this evening. Sierra approached, gently taking his hand. It's not ruined. Tomorrow, we will show everyone the truth. And if Victoria wants to play dirty, she'll have to face both of us. For a moment, Alex seemed surprised by her determination, then smiled, squeezing her hand. I never thought I'd find such a formidable ally in a quiet engineer from Vermont. Don't judge a book by its cover, she replied with a smile, especially if the cover is made of earth and traditions. That night, returning to her hotel, Sierra called her grandmother. How are things, my little one? The elderly woman asked. Tomorrow is the big day, Grandma. The public presentation. That's not what I asked, her grandmother countered wisely. I asked how you are. Sierra smiled in the darkness of her room. Her grandmother had always seen through her words. I'm discovering new things about New York, about the project, and about the Iceman. He's not ice anymore, Sierra admitted. Or maybe he never truly was. Ah, her grandmother simply replied, but in that single syllable was all the understanding in the world. Remember, Sierra, the heart knows its path long before the mind is ready to admit it. After hanging up, Sierra stood by the window for a long time, watching the lights of New York. For the first time, she wondered what it would be like to build a life in this city so different from her Vermont, a life that included a certain gray, blue-eyed entrepreneur who now appeared to her in a different light. The Brooklyn Civic Center was packed beyond all expectation. Neighborhood residents, journalists, local politicians, and investors crowded the main hall, creating a buzz of anticipation. On the stage, 2 tables had been prepared, one for Sierra and Alex, the other for Victoria and her team of experts. Half of New York is out here, Ethan commented, peeking from the side curtain. Councilwoman Adams mobilized all her supporters. Sierra, in an elegant dark blue dress she had carefully chosen, felt adrenaline surging through her veins. Beside her, Alex was unusually silent, his gaze focused. Are you worried? She asked softly. He shook his head. No. For the first time in years, I am completely convinced of what we are doing. Before he could add anything else, the lights dimmed, and the moderator, a respected urban planning professor, began the event. Victoria was the first to speak, illustrating the original project in measured but incisive tones and raising doubts about the proposed modifications. Sustainability is certainly important, she concluded with a studied smile, but not at the cost of the historical New York identity. Certain provincial influences, however well-intentioned, risk distorting the unique character of our beloved district. A murmur of approval spread among her supporters. Victoria concluded with a personal jab. New York has always welcomed external contributions, but ultimately, only New Yorkers can truly understand the soul of New York. When it was their turn, Alex stood up with studied calm. Good evening, everyone. I am Alexander Sterling, and as many of you know, I was not born in New York. A surprised silence fell over the hall. Never before had the entrepreneur publicly referenced his Boston origins. "I arrived here as a young man with big dreams and little experience. New York welcomed me, shaped me, and gave me opportunities. That's why I've always wanted to give something back to this extraordinary city." He paused, looking directly at Victoria. "But in my desire to excel, to build, to leave a mark, I risked forgetting something fundamental, that buildings are not just structures of concrete, steel, and glass. They are spaces where people live, love, dream. They are extensions of our collective history." He turned to Sierra, inviting her with a gesture to take his place. The passing of the torch was so natural, so sincere, that even the most cynical in the room were affected. Sierra took a deep breath, then began to speak with a clear, passionate voice. "I am not a New Yorker, it is true. I come from a small Vermont village where time flows differently. But precisely this external perspective has allowed me to see something precious in the waterfront district that many take for granted." She proceeded to illustrate the revised project, not with cold technical data, but by telling a story, the story of how a historic district could be reborn by respecting its roots and embracing the future. She explained how traditional American techniques, like using local stone, maximizing natural light, and respecting the watershed could integrate with modern innovations, creating spaces that breathed history, but looked to tomorrow. "Sustainability is not an abstract concept or a fad," she continued. "It is deeply rooted in traditional American wisdom. Our ancestors knew how to build in harmony with nature, how to respect the water cycles, how to create buildings that would last centuries." As she spoke, projected images showed the contrast between the original, elegant but standardized project and the new vision that incorporated green courtyards, rainwater collection systems inspired by traditional New England methods, and communal spaces that evoked the historic town squares. "This is not a Vermont project transplanted to New York," she concluded with passion. "It is a deeply New York project that honors this extraordinary city's past and imagines its future with respect and ambition." When she finished, a silence charged with emotion enveloped the room. It was broken by spontaneous applause that started in the back and quickly spread. Victoria, visibly irritated, asked for the floor for a rebuttal. "Fine words and beautiful images, certainly, but the facts remain. This modified project violates several historical preservation regulations, as documented in the dossier I presented to the board." It was Alex who responded with a calm that concealed steel determination. "Councilwoman Adams, I respect your concern for New York's historical heritage, so much so that I took the liberty of inviting someone tonight who could offer an authoritative opinion on the matter." A confused murmur spread through the room as a distinguished elderly gentleman rose from the audience. "Professor Harrington," Alex announced, the leading American authority on architectural conservation and former chairman of the National Historical Preservation Commission. The professor approached the microphone with measured steps. "I have carefully examined both versions of the project," he declared in an authoritative voice. "And I can affirm, without a shadow of a doubt, that the version revised by Dr. Dane Bennett not only fully respects all regulations, but represents an exceptional example of how historical conservation can dialogue with contemporary innovation." Victoria's face visibly hardened. "Professor Harrington, with all due respect, the dossier I presented—" "I have read it," the academic gently interrupted, "and I fear it contains erroneous interpretations of the regulations in question. I have prepared a detailed analysis, which I have already sent to all board members." A murmur of approval spread among the audience. Victoria, realizing she had lost ground, attempted a final thrust. "The fact remains that this project was substantially modified after initial approvals. The timing, the costs—" "The timing and costs will remain unchanged," Sierra interjected firmly. "We have reprogrammed every phase to ensure the project meets the original deadlines. And of 7 days. As for costs, our modifications will result in a 15% long-term saving, thanks to improved energy efficiency." The debate continued for another hour, but it was now clear which side public opinion favored. When the moderator invited those present to express an indicative opinion, the great majority declared themselves in favor of the revised project. At the end of the event, As the crowd dispersed, Victoria approached Alex with a forced smile. "A clever move, involving Harrington," she whispered. "But it's not over yet, Alex. The board still has to vote formally." "Do what you must, Victoria," he replied in a weary but firm tone. "But know that this time I'm not fighting just for myself or for a project. I'm fighting for something more important." His gaze shifted toward Sierra, who was talking animatedly with some neighborhood residents. Victoria followed his gaze and understood. "Ah, so that's it," she said with bitterness. "The small-town girl has made you lose your head?" "No," Alex replied calmly. "She helped me find it." Later, as the last participants left, Sierra and Alex remained alone in the now deserted center. The tension of the day gradually gave way to quiet satisfaction. "We did it," Sierra smiled, exhausted but happy. "Thanks to you," he replied, moving closer. "You conquered New York with your vision." They looked into each other's eyes, and in that moment, it seemed that everything else, the project, Victoria, the future, was temporarily suspended. There were just the two of them, united by something that transcended professional collaboration. "Come," Alex suddenly said, taking her hand. "There's a place I want to show you." The New York night wrapped the city in a mantle of blurry lights as Alex drove through increasingly quieter streets. Sierra watched the route with growing curiosity, wondering where he was taking her. "Almost there," he said, turning onto a secondary street in the Greenwich Village area. They stopped in front of an old, unassuming building. Alex pulled out an ancient key and opened a heavy wooden door. Inside, a surprisingly spacious courtyard was revealed in the moonlight. "What is this place?" Sierra asked, enchanted by the unexpected beauty. "My first real estate purchase," Alex replied, guiding her through the courtyard. "Before Sterling Urban Solutions existed, before the success." They climbed an external staircase that led to a hidden terrace, a rooftop garden overlooking the rooftops of downtown. Overgrown plants, a few time-worn stone benches, and a small fountain softly gurgling created a timeless atmosphere. "It's my refuge," he confessed. "No one knows it exists, not even Ethan." Sierra turned to him, understanding the profound significance of that gesture. He was showing her a part of himself he kept hidden from the world. "Why are you showing me?" Alex approached her slowly. "Because these past few days, you've seen the truth about me, more than anyone else. You've seen beyond the facade of the successful entrepreneur." The moonlight illuminated his face, revealing a vulnerability he rarely allowed to surface. "This place represents what I've always wanted to create: beauty, harmony, a dialogue between past and present." He paused, searching for the right words. "It's what you brought to the Tides project. It's what you awakened in me." Sierra felt her heart accelerate. She walked to the railing, looking at the illuminated city below them. "New York is beautiful from here," she whispered. "It always has been," he replied, joining her, "but I never truly saw it until I looked at it through your eyes." Their gazes met, and this time there were no interruptions, no urgent phone calls, no doubts. Only the certainty of a feeling born amidst architectural plans and shared visions, professional clashes, and personal revelations. Alex gently touched her face with his hand. "Alex, I know," she murmured, closing her eyes as their lips met in a delicate, then increasingly intense, kiss. It was a moment of perfection suspended in time. Their souls, so different yet complementary, seemed finally to recognize each other, as if they had been searching for each other through projects, discussions, and challenges. When the kiss ended, they remained embraced under the starry sky, Sierra's breath mixing with Alex's, their hearts beating in unison. "I'm scared," she confessed suddenly. "Of what?" "Of this. Of us. New York isn't my home, and soon I'll have to return to Vermont." Alex smiled softly. "Homes are not places, Sierra. They are people. They are connections. They are roots that can grow anywhere if the soil is right." He stroked her hair tenderly. "And if the soil isn't New York, if it's Vermont, or a completely new place?" Sierra looked at him in surprise. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that what we've found together is worth more than any project, any city. I'm saying I'm ready to find out where this road will take us. Together." That night, sitting in the secret garden above the rooftops of New York, Sierra and Alex talked for hours, sharing dreams, fears, and hopes. And when dawn began to color the sky, they had already begun to imagine a common future, a future where Sierra's Vermont roots and Alex's New York ambition could intertwine into something new and wonderful. The morning after the presentation, New York newspapers dedicated ample space to the Tides Project. Most headlines praised the innovative and tradition-respecting vision, but some, close to Victoria Adams, raised doubts and insinuations. "It was predictable," Alex commented, flipping through the newspapers in his office where Sierra had joined him. "Victoria has influence on certain press. What can we expect now?" Sierra asked, worried. "She will try to block the final approval on the board. She has 3 days to organize the opposition." Ethan entered with a grave look. "Boss, there's news. Councilwoman Adams has called a press conference for noon. She says she has important revelations about the project." Sierra and Alex exchanged a worried glance. "What kind of revelations?" "I don't know, but she's invited all the city media." At noon, the entire team gathered around a television. Victoria appeared, impeccable in a red suit with a confident smile. "I have uncovered irregularities in the consultant selection process," she announced. Dr. Bennett was hired without a public bidding process, violating transparency regulations. She showed documents, cited regulations, and then came the personal attack. "We must question whether this collaboration conceals motivations more personal than professional." A photo of Sierra and Alex, taken during their dinner at the farm-to-table restaurant, appeared on the screen. The innocent but intimate image acquired an ambiguous meaning in the context of the insinuations. "She's playing dirty," Ethan muttered, turning off the television. "She's attacking personally because she can't win professionally." Sierra was pale. "She's trying to professionally discredit me and damage the project." Alex remained silent for a few moments, then stood up with determination. "It won't work. We have the truth on our side, and a plan." The next 48 hours were intense. While Victoria orchestrated her media campaign, Alex and Sierra worked behind the scenes, patiently building their defense. They contacted every board member individually, meticulously documented every phase of the process, and engaged neighborhood residents' associations, showcasing popular support for the project. "We must be as strategic as she is, but remain faithful to our principles," Alex explained during an emergency meeting. Sierra nodded. "The difference is that we have nothing to hide." The night before the decisive vote, while finalizing their strategy in Alex's office, Sierra received an unexpected call. It was her grandmother. "Sierra, my child, I saw the news. Are you all right?" "Oh, Grandma," she sighed. "It's complicated. A local politician is trying to block the project and discredit me professionally." Out of jealousy, the elderly woman concluded wisely. "Not just professional, I imagine." Sierra blushed, looking at Alex, who was working intently nearby. "Perhaps. Remember, Sierra, when fighting someone blinded by rage or jealousy, your best weapon is never to retaliate in kind, it is to remain in the light of truth." Those words echoed in Sierra's mind as she prepared for the decisive day. Contrary to Victoria's expectations, neither she nor Alex had responded publicly to the accusations, focusing instead on the project itself. The morning of the vote, Sierra woke up with a strange calm. Whatever the outcome, she had fought with integrity and had found something, or someone, worth more than any professional project. "Are you ready?" Alex asked, meeting her in the hotel lobby. Sierra smiled, taking his hand. More than ever. Together, they headed toward City Hall, where the future of the Tides Project, and perhaps their future together, was about to be decided. The city council chambers were packed to capacity. Journalists, interested citizens, and, of course, representatives of the involved parties occupied every available space. Sierra and Alex sat composedly at the designated table across from the council members. A few feet away, Victoria Adams displayed an expression of studied confidence. The council president formally opened the session. "Today, we are called to vote on the final approval of the Tides Project with the modifications proposed by Dr. Bennett. Before the vote, we will allow one final statement from each party." Victoria was the first to speak, repeating her accusations eloquently. "Honorable councilors, this is not just about procedural irregularities, but a matter of professional integrity. When personal interests influence decisions that impact public heritage, it is our duty to intervene. Her rhetoric was impeccable, the tone measured yet incisive. The looks of some council members betrayed concern. When she concluded, a slight murmur spread through the room. It was Alex's turn to respond. He rose calmly, thanking the council for the opportunity. Then, instead of defending himself against the personal accusations, he made an unexpected move. "I would like the project itself to speak today," he said, signaling to an assistant who quickly distributed a folder to all council members. "What you are receiving is an independent analysis conducted by Columbia University, comparing our project with 3 other similar European urban revitalizations. The results speak for themselves." The council members began leafing through the documents with growing interest. The analysis clearly showed the advantages of the revised version: superior environmental sustainability, long-term economic savings, and more effective preservation of historical identity. As for the alleged irregularities in Dr. Bennett's selection, Alex continued, "My company's legal office has provided complete documentation that demonstrates full compliance with regulations. It is included in the second section." Victoria visibly fidgeted in her chair. She had not expected such a methodical and targeted approach. "Finally," Alex said, reaching the crucial point, regarding the insinuations about the nature of our collaboration. He paused, looking briefly at Sierra. A quiet determination shone in his eyes. "Yes, there is something personal about this project. The passion for excellence, the shared vision of a New York that honors its past while embracing the future, and I will not deny it, a profound professional admiration that has grown through collaborating with a brilliant mind like Dr. Bennett's." He turned to Victoria with a serene expression. "If that is a crime, I am guilty, but I believe New York deserves leaders who put the common good above personal rivalries and old grudges." A silence charged with tension followed his words. It was Sierra who broke it, rising gracefully. "Councilors, I come from a small Vermont town where one's word still has value. I came to New York to share a professional vision, not to be involved in controversy. The project we present deeply respects the soul of this city. I do not ask you to approve it for me, but for the New Yorkers who will live and work in those spaces for generations." The simplicity and authenticity of her intervention visibly struck the council. Even some journalists nodded. The president called the vote. As the council members cast their ballots, Victoria unexpectedly approached Sierra. "Well done," she whispered bitterly. "You've won everyone over, including him." Sierra looked her in the eyes. "This is not a competition, councilwoman. It wasn't about winning or losing, it was about doing the right thing." "Very poetic," Victoria smiled coldly. "But remember, New York can be ruthless with dreamers." "Or perhaps," Sierra quietly replied, "dreamers can transform New York." The final count was clear: 27 votes in favor, 8 against. The Tides Project, in the version revised by Sierra and Alex, was officially approved. As they exited the hall amidst congratulations and camera flashes, Alex briefly squeezed her hand. "We did it." "Yes," Sierra smiled. Together. That evening, as New York lit up at dusk, they celebrated with an intimate dinner in the secret rooftop garden. No exclusive restaurants or boisterous festivities, just the two of them, a bottle of Vermont cider, and the awareness of having overcome their first major trial together. "It's just the beginning, isn't it?" Sierra asked, looking at the city below them. Alex nodded, taking her hand. "Of many things." The echo of the Tides Project's success quickly spread beyond New York's borders. Specialized architecture and sustainability magazines dedicated in-depth articles to the innovative approach that merged tradition and modernity. Sierra, initially reluctant to be in the spotlight, found herself interviewed by American and international journalists. "I never imagined all this," she confessed to Alex one evening, as they jointly flipped through a prestigious architecture periodical that labeled them the couple redefining the concept of sustainable urban development in America. "You deserve it," he replied, watching her affectionately. "You brought a completely new vision." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Tides Project construction site was inaugurated with an official ceremony attended by the mayor and various dignitaries. Victoria Adams was notably absent. Meanwhile, the professional collaboration between Sierra and Alex had transformed into something deeper. Their different perspectives, his urban efficiency, her rural sensibility, created an irresistible synergy. Sterling Urban Solutions received proposals from other American cities interested in similar approaches. One late spring afternoon, while working in his office, Alex surprised Sierra with an unexpected question. "Have you ever thought about staying in New York? Permanently, I mean." Sierra looked up from the blueprints, taken aback. "I don't know, my life is in Vermont, Grandma, my roots." "I understand," he replied with an understanding smile. It was just a thought. But the question continued to resonate in Sierra's mind in the following days. New York was slowly entering her heart with its frantic rhythms, but also with its creative energy. And then there was Alex, the man she had discovered beneath the successful entrepreneur's shell. One evening, after a long day of work, Alex invited her to dinner at a restaurant outside the city. They drove through the New Jersey countryside until they reached a small farm-to-table inn on a hill that offered a breathtaking view of the surrounding landscape. "This place reminds me of home," Sierra commented, observing the fields stretching to the horizon, illuminated by the sunset. "I know," Alex smiled. "That's why I chose it." During dinner, they talked about everything and nothing, enjoying the simplicity of the moment. Then, suddenly, Alex became serious. "Sierra, there's something I need to tell you. I've made an important decision." She looked at him curiously. "What is it?" "I bought land in Vermont." Sierra was speechless, her wineglass suspended in midair. "It's a small parcel of land near your hometown," he continued, "with a view of the Green Mountains. There's even a small brook running through it." "But why?" she asked, confused and moved. Alex took a deep breath. "Because I realized that success isn't about building skyscrapers or winning projects. It's about building a life that has meaning." He paused, searching for the right words. "A life with deep roots." He gently took her hands. "I'm not asking you to give up your Vermont for New York. I'm asking if we can create something together, a place that is ours, that unites our worlds." Sierra's eyes filled with tears. "Are you saying that?" "I'm saying I love you, Sierra Bennett, and I want to build a future with you, whether it's in New York, Vermont, or on the moon." She laughed through her tears. "I'd prefer to avoid the moon. The air is terrible for growing a garden." She got up and walked around the table to hug him. "Yes," she whispered. "I want to build something with you, something that lasts." The next day, Sierra called her grandmother to share the news. "I knew it," the elderly woman replied serenely. "I knew it the first time you told me about him, even when you called him the Iceman." "How could you know?" Sierra asked, surprised. "Because you talked about him the way a gardener talks about fertile land just waiting for the right seed," Grandma Grace replied wisely. "And you, my child, have always been an excellent gardener." In the following months, while the Tides project took shape in New York, their personal plans also materialized. They decided to keep an apartment in Manhattan for work, but build their primary home in Vermont, a dwelling personally designed by Sierra that merged the clean lines Alex favored with the warm, rural New England tradition. The idea for the educational foundation was born one evening as they discussed how they could share their vision with the next generation. "Imagine young designers from small American towns having the opportunities we had to fight for," Sierra proposed enthusiastically. Alex nodded, his eyes shining. "A place where tradition and innovation merge, where we teach that roots are not chains, but strength." As summer gave way to autumn, Sierra noticed changes in her body. One morning, after a test, came the confirmation she was expecting a child. When she told Alex, she saw something she had never seen before. The imperturbable entrepreneur cried with joy, embracing her as if she were the most precious treasure in the universe. "A girl," he whispered later, one hand resting gently on Sierra's still flat belly. "I have a feeling she'll have your eyes, and my Vermont stubbornness," she smiled. "What an explosive combination." They exchanged a knowing glance. "Lily," they replied in unison. The New York sky was full of stars that night as they made plans for the future, a future that now included not just buildings and projects, but a new life that would definitively unite their worlds. Autumn painted the Green Mountains red and gold when Sierra and Alex returned to her hometown. The news of the pregnancy had accelerated their plans to build the Vermont house, and now they came to visit the land with Grandma Grace. "It's beautiful," Sierra whispered, standing on the gentle slope Alex had purchased. The panorama stretched to the horizon, rolling hills, silver apple orchards, and maples pointing toward the sky like ancient sentinels. Alex watched her tenderly. His face looked more relaxed here, away from the hustle of New York. He wore jeans and a simple sweater attire, unthinkable for the entrepreneur he once was. "Do you really like it?" he asked, with unusual insecurity in his voice. "It's perfect," she replied, squeezing his hand. "I can already see the house here, with large windows to capture this light." Grandma Grace, who had accompanied them despite her advanced age, nodded in approval. "This land has good energy. The brook running through it brings good fortune, according to local beliefs." Alex smiled. "It was the brook that convinced me. It reminded me of your words about the natural flow of things." They walked around the land, imagining where the house would stand. Sierra, now 4 months pregnant, absent-mindedly stroked her belly as she described her vision: a structure that respects the landscape, using local fieldstone and wood, solar panels integrated into the roof, and here, near the brook, a vegetable patch like Grandma Grace's. Alex listened, fascinated. This man who had built imposing urban buildings was now emotional at the idea of a simple country house. "The Tides project is almost complete," he commented. "Ethan can manage the final phases. We could start construction here this winter." "That would be perfect," Sierra smiled. "The baby would be born in the spring." "Have you chosen a name yet?" Grandma Grace asked. Sierra and Alex exchanged a knowing glance. "Lily," they replied in unison. The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my children." That evening at Grandma Grace's house, they dined in the simple kitchen where Sierra had grown up. The contrast between this modest setting and the exclusive New York restaurants could not have been more evident. Yet, Alex seemed perfectly at ease, helping Grandma Grace set the table, listening with interest to her stories about local history. "You know," the elderly woman said as she served the stew, "when Sierra first told me about the Iceman from New York, I was worried. But now I see you weren't ice. You were just waiting for the right warmth." Alex nodded, looking at Sierra affectionately. "Your granddaughter has a special talent for seeing beyond appearances, in work and in life." After dinner, sitting under the arbor, Alex pulled a small case from his pocket. "I wanted to do it here," he said, his voice slightly trembling, "in this place that represents your roots, with your grandmother's blessing." He opened the case, revealing a ring with a small green stone, similar to the color of Sierra's eyes. "It's not a traditional diamond," he explained. "It's a Vermont green sapphire found in these mountains centuries ago. I had it set in a modern design band." Sierra looked at him emotionally, understanding the symbolism, tradition, and innovation, just like their love. "Sierra Bennett, will you marry me?" "Yes," she simply replied as her grandmother watched the scene with tearful eyes. As Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, Sierra felt a slight movement in her belly. Little Lily, still invisible to the world, seemed to participate in that moment of happiness. "The house will be ready before the baby arrives," Alex promised, "and it will be the beginning of something wonderful." Twilight wrapped the Green Mountains in a golden embrace as 3 generations, and a 4th on the way, shared a moment of pure joy under a sky slowly filling with stars. Vermont spring exploded in 1,000 shades of green, as if nature itself wanted to celebrate the arrival of little Lily, born on a bright April morning. The baby had her father's gray-blue eyes and, according to her grandmother, Sierra's determined smile. "She's perfect," Alex whispered, holding his daughter in his arms for the first time in the hospital room in Burlington. In his gaze was a tenderness that no million-dollar deal had ever elicited. 2 months later, on a June day, friends and family gathered for a double celebration: Sierra and Alex's wedding and the inauguration of their new home. The ceremony took place outdoors under a flowering arbor in the garden of the newly completed dwelling. Sierra wore a simple ivory silk dress with small wildflowers woven into her hair, a tribute to New England traditions. Alex, elegant but without the formal rigidity of his New York past, couldn't take his eyes off her. The house, personally designed by Sierra, was a masterpiece of harmony: local stone and glass, modern lines that respected the traditional Vermont barn architecture. In the center of the courtyard, the small brook had been integrated into a rock garden with native plants. "It's a bridge between our worlds," Sierra explained to the guests during the reception. "Just like our story." Among the guests were Ethan and some Manhattan colleagues, visibly struck by the beauty of the place. Even Victoria Adams had sent a message of congratulations, a small sign of a thaw. After sunset, when most of the guests had left, Sierra and Alex found themselves sitting by the brook, little Lily asleep in her grandmother's arms inside the house. "Are you happy?" he asked, gently stroking her hand. "More than I ever imagined," Sierra replied, resting her head on his shoulder. They watched together as the first stars appeared in the Vermont sky. In the distance, the lights of the small village twinkled like familiar beacons. "The Tides project was completed last week," Alex commented. "It was a success beyond expectations, and the educational foundation will open next fall." "A new generation of designers uniting tradition and future," Sierra smiled. "Like us." Alex took her face in his hands, looking at her intently. "You know, for years I believed that success was building imposing structures, leaving a visible mark on the world. And now I know that true success is building something that nurtures the soul, a family, a future, a love that grows every day." They kissed under the Vermont stars, as the faint gurgle of little Lily waking up came from the house. "Our most beautiful masterpiece is calling us," Sierra smiled, getting up. Hand in hand, they headed toward the luminous house, where not only their baby awaited them, but a future built on solid foundations: respect, authenticity, and the ability to see beauty where others saw only contrasts. The brook continued to flow peacefully in the garden, a silent symbol of that love, born between New York and Vermont, between ambitious projects and simple values, between a man who had rediscovered his soul and a woman who had never lost her roots. And above them, the starry Vermont sky seemed to promise that this was only the first page of a story destined to endure, like the ancient hills surrounding their new home, the story of Sierra and Alex, of Lily, and of the dreams yet to be realized. A story of a love built with patience, respect, and authenticity. A story that, just like the brook in their garden, would continue to flow, to grow, and to nurture the land around it for years to come.